Welcome to Mundown, an indie horror game that I really like. Mundown takes place in the Swiss Alps, but this time everything's hand-drawn and it feels very oppressive. Curtin, our protagonist, receives a letter stating that his grandfather has perished in a house fire. So you return home to visit his grave and say your goodbyes. Fairly average stuff. You even get to pet a goat.
Hello, T.
And then it becomes very quickly apparent that something else went down, and maybe the whole town needs your help. The first thing you would notice about this game, even on the store page, is the visuals. They're very different from most games, and it's a selling point. They even market it that way on their store page. But despite that, for the first 30 or so minutes, the sepia color grade can be off-putting. But I promise it really does work for this game. The sepia grade combined with the heavy-handed, painterly use of a hand-drawn art style really elevates this game into a league of its own. It does take a while to get over the stigma of black and white or sepia is bad and then colour is good, but this game was never going to look good on a technical level as other bigger budget horror games like Layers of Fear or the Outlast games. So in a very wise move, they decided to amp the creative art style up to 11, and it's a move that I really admire. Mundown's colour grade and its hand-drawn art style create this oppressive tone throughout the game. It's very expressionist, I would say. Mundown, the town, and indeed the mountain and the Swiss peaks and everything feels distant. Even from the first introduction, which is quite literally a burnt down, smouldering wreck of a barn. I like the fact that everything's hand-drawn. It creates this immediate separation from the genre norms of indie horror. Mundown just felt like a much more unique game because of it. Despite the plot being a variation of the devil collecting his dues, the game never really fell into what my brain thought would happen. It constantly surprised me. I think a lot of that is just because of the art style. It does throw you off. You know, a safe room with a bed, a stove, and a save point doesn't feel safe. Not because we have proof of it not being safe, but rather because the hand-drawn nature of the game's textures makes it feel like it could be invaded. It feels hostile and aggressive despite it being a safe place. That extends to Mundown's residents, who also just look horrific. They're obviously human, but they also look like characters of humans, which again is a hand-drawn art style thing. A constant presence throughout the game is Flenia, I think her name is, a young girl that lives in the town, and well, again, she always made me think she was about to backstab me, or was actually the devil in disguise, which, yeah, little girls are often a trope in horror, but again, the art style is really unnerving. It's a picture storybook, but it's fucked. That's probably the best way to sell it. But moving away from the horror aspects, the game looks fucking incredible. Even just walking around looks great. The use of lighting, particularly shadows and gold rays, is extremely well done here. And, in some cases, it even attaches itself to gameplay and to progression. Again, a really smart move. I cannot fault Mundown for its graphics or styling. It is, probably the best looking horror game I've played in a long time. A lot of its horror is visual, and most of it looks great. A figure being reflected off of the lake? Yeah, that looks great. Smoke effects? Yep, great. A painting consuming you? Perfect. The fact that mirrors in this game actually reflect the characters and their animations? Again, perfect. You can look down and see your body and the equipment you're using. It's really well done here. It's immersive and is a relatively simple thing to do, but it adds so much. And, well, immersive is also how I would describe the audio. An important part of this game's immersive quality is the fact that the developers have chosen to stay true to their Swiss roots. Every character speaks Swiss. Which is something I greatly admire. A lot of developers would have caved and simply made the game into English, which would have felt off to me. It's a Swiss game set in the Swiss Alps. Let them speak Swiss. And, of course, on that note, the next logical step would be voice acting. And the voice acting is really well done. I can't really fault the linguistic quality of delivery of lines, because I don't know Swiss. But I can say that there was heaps of emotion behind the line delivery, especially from my core character Curtin. In most voiced games, I read the subtitles and then skip the delivery. but I found myself reading the subtitles and then sticking around for the delivery of the lines anyway. That's pretty good. That means the voice acting is excellent in my mind. The old man is another high point in terms of voice acting. He does his lines greatly. And he sounds, adequately creepy. Audio effects like footsteps, damage, engine noise, and atmosphere, surprise, surprise, all sound great, and it all works to further immerse the player in the world. Which is really important because this is kind of a walking sim. Kind of. I would describe it as a mixture between an adventure game and a walking sim. It's also a horror game too, but it's a really interesting execution on a mixture of three genres, and it does work, but it does have some problems, mainly to do with pacing and general progression, but we'll touch on those later. For now, the gameplay revolves around exploring a fairly large open world full of landmarks that all have different uses, be it loot, a safe house, or an upgrade. And I know the term open world may put some people off, but it's more akin to Crysis' open world than it is to Skyrim. The world is focused and easy to navigate, but with plenty off the beaten path to reward more daring players. Upgrades can be found that boost health, your proficiency with a rifle, and you can also make coffee to boost your capacity to deal with scary shit. And that last one is very important. The game's secondary gameplay loop is combat and stealth mechanics, and well, they aren't the best, to be honest with you. Combat is basic, there's no blocking, no dodging, just a simple hit mechanic, effectively. You can take a few hits before you die, but you can also dish out a fair amount of damage using a pitchfork or a rifle. The pitchfork has durability and can be used for 3 or so hits before breaking, leaving you defenseless. The rifle takes ammo, which is finite in amount and is best reserved for late game enemies that will kill you if you can't attack at range. But the otherwise, large sum, the bulk of Mundaan's gameplay is puzzles and exploring the immersive and atmospheric Swiss Alps, which is the highlight of the experience. The world is densely populated despite its rather small size. It never really feels small though. A lot of this is probably down to the more topographically heavy design of the world, and by that I mean the game has a lot of hills, which help to make it feel bigger than it actually is. The experience is a very streamlined and focused one, much to its betterment. It's always clear what you need to do and what you need to do it. Apart from some small moments here and there, the game is ultimately a series of puzzles. Not logically intensive ones, but the kind of puzzle which is A needs B, so go find B. Those kind of puzzles, which, oddly enough, are my favourite actually. One such example of one of these puzzles is how an aging veteran up in the mountain needs some hay, honey and snaps, alcohol, before he can tell you some key information you need. So that gives you a list of 3 things to find. We already know where to find hay because we've been fighting and killing hay monsters for the last couple hours. And we know that we can get hay from, around where they spawn. And we also know that we have a truck that can pick up hay. So that's the hay done with. But what about the honey and the snaps? Well, snaps can be found in my grandfather's house on the top shelf. Easy. The honey is the involved one. We have to go further up the mountain to where the beekeepers live, and well, they're kind of fucked now. They float around and they spew bees at us. It's a stealth combat sequence, basically. But earlier in the game, the friendly neighborhood blank-faced girl gives us a weird note about bees. So you can consult your really, really well-done journal. You can left-click to turn the pages until you find the one about bees. You can then use the tobacco pipe you got you basically got it at the very first moment of the game. And it makes the bees dissipate and fly away. And that's just one example of how the Mundaun devs blend gameplay and narrative, because that kind of thing is done heaps in Mundaun. It's great. It feels rewarding to put 2 and 2 together to get 4. A lot of the puzzles in Mundaun aren't always spelled out at the best of times, but none of them are illogical. None of them are your typical point-and-click adventure puzzles where you have to combine a shoestring with a rock to get a coat hanger to open up a door to a cannon or something. A lot of them just involve having the right item for the right job. And most of the time, you are practically forced to pick up that item before leaving an area. Which is a nice touch. It does feel like hand-holding, because, well, it is. But it did save me a lot of needless backtracking otherwise. So I mentioned earlier how the game has some problems with pacing and progression. And it is nothing major, but it is fairly noticeable in the last quarter that the game has been rushed. And this is all spoiler free, but the game gives you a decision that doesn't entirely make sense. And the whole ability to make a decision comes out of nowhere. It's the typical telltale good-bad decision. But it's not obvious which decision is meant to be the good one. So that's weird. But there are some more problems, and most of them just relate to certain things not being made clear to the player. So here's a list. Item 1. Coffee. To make coffee, you need 5 things. An oven, a cup, a log to heat the oven, the coffee itself, and a pan. And that's fine and all, makes logical sense. But the problem arises from the fact that the pan is really easy to miss. And because it's not strictly needed for progression, the game doesn't force you to grab it. But coffee has a very integral use in this game. It's used to increase your sanity, allowing you to move quicker around enemies, and I assume also helps you to aim when near an enemy, because your aim flies around the screen when an enemy's near you. And I assume coffee fixes that. The 6 coffees around the world, I made 4, and it did seem way more manageable than it did at 2. So it probably helps. Item 2. The Hay Creature's ranged attack. The Hay Creatures have a really weird attack. It's a ranged attack which slows you down every time it hits you. It also obscures your vision in hay. And this seems good on paper as a way to add intensity to combat. But the issue arises from the fact that you don't have a ranged weapon for pretty much most of the game. So enemies that can attack at range and slow you down at range results in a lot of early game deaths. Especially when the stealth system is, half-baked at best. The solution for this is to simply just get rid of the slowdown mechanic entirely and just make the hay creatures hurt you. That way you could retreat to cover and break line of sight. Item 3. Some weird puzzles. So some puzzles in this game just don't make sense at all. And I can't really expand on this without spoilers, so I won't. But just to be clear, sometimes you have to look it up. Because sometimes it's not clear. And that's probably a localization thing, if anything. And if you do end up playing this game, you'll know what I mean when you get up to these parts, and don't be afraid to Google it. But let's look at the narrative now. You play as Curdon. You receive a letter from your hometown's priest telling you that your grandfather has passed away and has been buried. That there's no real reason to come back here. The letter is fishy, to say the least. After a long bus ride into town, you find your way to your grandfather's barn. It's been burnt to a crisp. You're greeted by a goat, who you can pet, and I'm not going to lie here, that was the thing that sold me on this game. I thought it was the best shit ever. You explore the barn and you get sucked into a painting, where an old man in the barn, who is not your grandfather, a very important distinction, because I was a bit confused at first as well, grabs hold of your hand and turns into a burnt up hand. He calls it a gift. And something's obviously wrong here. You awaken to the burnt body of your grandpa inside the bar. You take his pipe as something to remember him by and you continue on your way. You're basically told for a series of flashbacks and dialogue that your grandfather wasn't really the saint that you were told about. During what I can only assume was the First or even the Second World War, your grandfather and his squad were the sole defenders of Mundown in this mountain pass. They were beset by the opposing army that apparently totaled hundreds in number. They were basically fucked, for lack of a better term. Until, dun dun dun, the old man appeared and offered them a deal. He could eliminate the army in exchange for one unbaptized soul. And yeah, in case you haven't caught on, the old man is the devil, or at least something like it in Swiss folklore. They agree to the old man's deal, and the old man drowns the other army in an avalanche. And the squad now has 7 days to pay their debt, otherwise the old man will presumably kill them, I would assume. And the squad decides to trick the literal devil. They offer up the squad's goat, because technically the goat is unbaptized, so it works. And the devil is locked away in the mountain for the next however many years. Until he isn't. And then Curdon comes along and manages to defeat him, and it is a fairly stock standard narrative, but it has heaps of interesting and unique elements to it. Albeit they are minor aspects, but they add heaps of flavour into Mundown's story and tone. For example, An important character of the game is a local painter whose paintings can affect reality. He's the one that actually set the barn on fire, for example, because he painted it to happen. He also hinders progress at one point because he paints a landscape of a valley that doesn't have a bridge, but you fix it by painting a bridge. It's a moment that had me genuinely impressed because it was just really cool. And also the fact that the sacrificed goat speaks to you is another unique moment. There's a lot on display here, but I would be here for hours if I talked about it all. So I'll leave it at this. Mundown's narrative is interesting. It is somewhat basic, but it has enough unique moments to make the overall narrative one worth playing through. And, well, that's Mundown, which leaves one question. Should you buy it? And, yeah, I really think you should. You really should. It's easily one of the more inventive and atmospheric horror games I've played in a long time. And the best part is it's not even dependent on jump scares. There's not a single one in the entire game. Oh, there is technically one, but you see it coming. So is it really a jump scare? I don't know about that one, but there is technically one. It has an atmosphere that is just downtrodden and oppressive. It's great. Plus you get around, run around the Swiss Alps, which I don't think I've ever played in a video game. I highly recommend it. And on that note, stay tuned for potentially 2 other videos this month, both of which are horror games, and both of them are worth playing. So, thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There is more on the way. Thank you.